helpful just to get a little bit of background story, so a bit of a plotted life history. So I wonder, Sheryl, would you be up for going first, telling us a bit more about who you are and your life experiences so far?
So good evening, everyone, and thank you, Ness and Co. and John. It's great to be here with you. So I'm not very good at talking about myself. I think I mentioned that to Ness earlier. People see me, but people don't know much about me because that's just the type of person I am. So I was born in Jamaica many years ago, and maybe one day I'll tell you how many years ago. Many years ago. And so I grew up. So, when we went to that thing we had just before the virus, Ness, when I went with you guys to that, what was it, in that conference or something that you were in charge of? I can't remember now.
Oh, the Pioneer Leaders Conference.
Yes, that's the one, right. I heard a word that I've never heard, or a term I've never heard before, and it was ACE, adverse childhood experience. I've never really heard about it. But when the person who was talking said it, I thought, God, that's definitely me. I definitely had an ACE experience, or I'm an ACE person. So I've had my fair share of wonderful ACE moments in my life. And maybe one day I'll feel confident enough or brave enough to share some of it. But for now, I just say my childhood was mixed. There were some very good moments and there's some really terrible moments. And I grew up in a big family, and my dad, who I love very much, was one of those typical, and now we're talking about race, so I'm going to be okay to say it, typical Black man that has lots of women who had lots of children. So I have lots of brothers and sisters, some of them half, and two full brothers, and everybody else half, and many of them. I don't think anybody truly knows how many. That's how bad it is. So you can imagine the mixed relationships we've had over the years when I was growing up. But I managed to, I got into a school, a very good school, a boarding school for girls. One of the reasons my dad wanted me to go was because I was a tomboy. So I am the eldest, and I had lots of brothers below me. But because I was small in terms of them, I had to always try to beat them. So I was definitely a tomboy. So he thought if he sent me to girls finishing school, I would turn out to be a lovely lady. That's still to be decided. But anyway, um, I had a really good education. Lots of struggles when I was at school. I started out, I didn't have a lot of self-confidence when it came to education, and struggled a lot. And when I was in, I don't know what level that is here, but when I was in third form and you had to choose what subject you wanted, I wanted to be a doctor, so I chose all the science subjects. And my teacher, I had science and Spanish and French, and I had to go back to the teachers. And when they crossed it out, they said, why did she choose Spanish and French? No. Science, question marks. I had to go to talk to the science person. And she said, well, Sheryl, why do you want to do science? I said, well, I want to be a doctor. I said, well, your teacher doesn't think you can do it. And I cried and cried. I said, well, that's what I want to do. And she said, okay, I'm going to give you 3 months. 3 months. And if you can prove that you can do it, and I tell you, I worked the hardest I've worked in my entire life, that 3 months, but it paid off. And here I am now, struggle through university, end up going to teaching, which is, I think, is my passion. And then I got a master's. I went to Sweden for a year, did a master's. And then when I went back to Jamaica, I got MPhil, and I wanted to do a PhD. So I applied and got into Loughborough. So I'm one of those who have lots of degrees. I have 4 altogether. So here I am in Loughborough, and then I tell you more as we go on. Let's give John a chance to say a little bit about how. So that's how I got here, and that came in 2002 for my PhD.
I was going to say, just in terms of what kind of where you were born, brought up, lived, and then just give us a very quick timescales.
So I was in Jamaica. I didn't leave Jamaica until 1996 when I went to America for visits. And then I came to the UK in 1999, and I went to Sweden for a year, went back to Jamaica, and then I came to the UK in 2002, and I've been here since.
Okay, wow. So that's
Wow.
Jamaica, USA, UK, Sweden. Well-travelled lady.
Yes. Thank you.
John.
I was going to say, I feel we've just skimmed the surface of your story there, Sheryl. There's lots of stuff in there that's amazing. It's amazing. I suppose my life isn't as colourful as Sheryl's is, in terms of travel and living abroad. I certainly don't have 4 degrees, unfortunately. I'm just not that way inclined. But I'm first generation born here, so my parents came over from Nigeria. First, they came to study, and so my older brother and I were born in Liverpool. We lived there for a year. We moved to London, and that's where I say I would call home, but that's where most of my life has been spent. In terms of, I suppose, life, I'm a pastor's kid. So I was brought up in the church, part of worship, early years. I'd say my life was, in terms of Nigerian families, my parents never forced me to do things. They were quite nurturing, they were quite encouraging, which is very different from a lot of Nigerian parents, particularly my friends that I've grown up with who are Nigerian. They either want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a nurse or something like that. Something that's quite high profile for them. Education is really important. I was never really pushed down that road. I'd always wanted to be an architect from the age of 8, so I went and studied architecture at De Montfort University. I got to a bit of a crossroads, and this is where my dad was great, in that he was just like, you've got to do something. So I decided to, I said, stop architecture where it was and moved into sport. So I've sort of been working in sport and charity sector, say the last sort of 10 years, maybe 12 years, and currently working at Leicester City Football Club in Leicester. So that's sort of a snapshot.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, so we want to kind of dig in a little bit deeper, and first we'll just ask both of you for your responses and your reactions to the killing of George Floyd. That's obviously been a trigger for so much that we've seen over recent weeks, but just personally, for you both, how did that make you feel? Your responses, your reactions, what do you see, what do you sense? We'd really like to hear from you on that.
Yeah.
So, John?
I'm happy to go first. I've not actually watched the video, and I don't think I will. Stuff like that really hits me heavily. When I read about it, for me it was like, oh no, not again, another black man killed, police brutality. And it's been hard to stomach. So for me, it's been the first thing that I think about waking up in the morning for probably the best part of 2 weeks, and it's been the last thing that I think about before I go to bed. And I think it's more the brutality, and the clear disregard for human life, first and foremost for me, that sits really deeply within me, that sort of churns my stomach. If you take race out of it, a human has been murdered quite brutally. So it's been really sad. It's been hard to process the whole, I say, fallout from it. So the Black Lives Matters movement, the protests, it's not just stuck in sort of Minneapolis, is it? It's spreading across the world. I'm in a WhatsApp group with a group of friends. There's 7 of us, and we've all grown up from school, sort of known each other for 20 plus years. And for the first couple of days, the following week after the murder of George Floyd, nothing was said. And then I sort of took it upon myself to just put a message and just say, guys, you know, how's everyone feeling? And then all of a sudden it just went, you know, the floodgates opened, and it was just conversation after conversation, and a lot of hurt, a lot of questions as to why, frustration, anger, sadness, on both sides, you know, for the police as well as the family, who've lost a loved one. So I think emotion wise, just real sadness. I've really felt it in my stomach. I felt it physically. Even as I'm talking about it now, I can feel sort of quite deep within me, yeah, my stomach churning. But for me, what's been really positive is that this feels really different, in terms of the aftermath. So we've seen a lot more people coming out of all races, speaking out against it. Because I remember when, I think my first experience, but my first viewing of police brutality was Rodney King in 1991 in LA, and you sort of had the riots that happened in LA quite soon after, and then everything sort of slowly fizzled out. But this is, you know, people have described this as not just a moment but a movement that's happening. And it's one that I feel is bringing a lot of hope, not just to Black people, but to marginalised. I think a lot of people will begin to sit up and really, hopefully, I feel, start to be inclusive in all areas.
Very good. And Sheryl.
Right. So for me, I think, well, it's very difficult to talk about it and explain, because it's not easy to explain to somebody how something like that could have such a massive impact. But the way I'll try and explain it is that I am a person who everybody knows is always smiling and laughing and stuff, because that's just my personality. People know me at work as being enthusiastic, because I just love life and I love the opportunities and things that are happening around us. COVID-19 for me, the time has been really busy, because everybody's gone online, and that's what my work is. So I've been very, very busy. So to be honest, I didn't see it the same day it happened, because I've been tired, go to bed early, whatever. And then I just turned the news on, and so I didn't know what was happening or anything. I just turned the news on, and all I saw was the footage, and I burst out crying, because I thought, oh my God, this cannot be real. It cannot be like a live, you know, you watch movies and you know that person's going to get up and walk in a minute because it's a movie. But here you are, somebody who, you know, so for me, I turned it off immediately. I turned it off straight away. I didn't want to think about it, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to even visit it. I just thought in my head, it can't be really real. And then I just left it. And then again, I turned the TV on in the evening, and it was there. And I thought, God, it is real. It is really happened. And for me, the first reaction was, here we are again, as John said, somebody else's life. And it doesn't even matter if the person was Black. That was just murder in front of, in broad daylight, we would say in Jamaica. In broad daylight, you've killed somebody in broad daylight. So that was what I felt first and foremost. And then I started to put faces on that man. So I didn't see George Floyd. I saw my dad, I saw my cousin, my brother, and the tears just flooded, because I thought it could be anyone. It could be anyone. And so that's what the impact it had on me. And then I spoke to my mom, I spoke to my friends. We all were outraged, etc. And then I had work. So work, as I said, was very busy. So I had work. We had a meeting in the morning, and I just went to the meeting without saying anything, because I just couldn't. And then we went to another meeting, and people were talking and everything. At the end of the meeting, I thought, I have to say something, because I can't, people must be wondering what's going on with her, because she hasn't said anything. People know me to say something in a meeting. So at the end of the meeting, I had to say something. I said, look, people, we really need to reach out to our students and find out, students and staff, to find out how they're managing with this situation. And that was the very first time in my school that I've spoken up about anything to do with race in terms of a whole group of people. And I burst out crying in the meeting, and I didn't intend to start crying, But I burst out crying, and then they started asking me questions. I said, no, I don't want to talk about it. So we started to talk about something else. And I left the meeting, and I got emails, messages, people calling me. And that even overwhelmed me even more. And just as John said, it just felt that people understood that this was something that has erupted and changed how we view what's happening in society and how we're going to make a difference with it. And sometimes things happen and it's very sad, but sometimes it's also what's going to happen after. And we need to take this moment and say, look, enough is enough. This needs to stop. And I'm so proud of the church. I'm so proud of how people have reacted. And I just don't want it to be like, oh, we're going to react now because it's happening. But I want it to be something that we think about going forward. And maybe at the end of this, we'll talk about some more about that. But for me, it was heartrending just to see it. And I was one of those people who wanted to call the news people and say, stop showing it because it's not fair. It's not a nice thing to see, and even though you're putting it on the news because it's news, there's lots of people who see it and just can't look at it. And that's the bit that really upset me, the fact that they could put it on every news you see it. And I'm thinking, don't they know how much you feel when you see that? So that was one of the things that really angered me. The amount of time it was shown and shown and shown, that really hurt.
Yeah. Thank you for your honesty. I'm sure when you burst into tears in that work meeting, I'm sure everyone's hearts just broke.
It was the first time and I didn't expect it to happen, but I just started talking and it just happened. And I thought, but you know what happened after that? I got a call and they said, would it be possible for us to have a meeting? So it meant that my school, we had a discussion about it and people came, and I was so pleased how many people came and people were willing to talk and listen. People were willing to say, I really don't know what to say. People said to me in their messages, I really don't want to say, but I want to send you a hug. And that is the thing. I think a lot of people don't know what to say because they feel like we're saying that they're guilty of something. I'm not saying anybody is guilty because we are all not nice to each other, whether we are white, black, or whatever. We need to be nice to each other, and it's not just white people being bad against. But this is a moment in time that we need to focus on this thing because this is a thing, and we need to focus on it. So there are lots of other things happening, and we don't want to distract from them as well. But this moment is about this particular thing. Yeah. This racism, this systematic one, this one, and a lot of people say, oh, it's in the US, it's not in the UK. But it might not be in the UK in the same way, but it's here in lots of other ways. And the moment you start saying it's not here, the moment you're denying the reality. Yeah. And I know it's not an easy thing because I could see from the messages I got, people were going, I'm not sure what to say, I'm not sure what to say. Yeah, the fact that you're not sure what to say, that's fine. Say you're not sure what to say, but you know that it must be hurting because we're all people. We all hurt. Yeah. There are things that happen that hurts us. We all the same. Yeah. So reaching out to somebody because they're hurting doesn't have to say it's because of this what's happening. I know it must be impacting you. How can I help? And that's the main thing. How can I help? What can I do? Can I sit with you? Can I talk with you? And when we start doing that, that's when the change happens. But denying that it exists or saying it's not the same or it's not the same magnitude, it doesn't matter what the magnitude is. As long as it is there, it's wrong. Yeah. It could be a tiny bit, it's still wrong. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be killing. But anything else that makes somebody feel uncomfortable or makes somebody oppress somebody from being show their true potential is wrong. And if that is because the way they look, then it's definitely wrong racism. And that's what is wrong. Yeah. And that's where we need to start digging out what that is and looking within ourselves and seeing how we feel about it and seeing, because I'm not blaming anyone. It's something that we learn, we grow up in a situation. I grew up in a different situation. John grew up in a situation. Ness, you grew up in a different situation. We talk differently, but the system that the world has been made around is been made around white men. And as a woman, and as a Black woman, as an engineer, and as a single woman, no kids, I have 5 things against me that makes me stand out already. So, it's a system that is set up for one thing and you battle against it. So so that's how I feel about it. And I don't normally talk about it, but it's been dwelling inside me, and it's just feel like it's like overpowering now. I can't really let it settle anymore. Normally I'm like, I'm just going to get on with what I'm doing, but this is just too much now. I think it's important, and I feel, as I said to you earlier, I don't normally talk about myself. I'm much more, how can I help you, and I'm there. But I feel people need to know how it's affected me, how it's affected my family, what can they do to help. So thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, Sheryl, I think you're talking about I suppose a sense of frustration that's built up over the years, and now it's, you know, pouring out. You've just got to look at the riots that are happening, the riots and protests that are taking place. So I grew up in Tottenham, and in 2011, when Mark Duggan was shot, the first riots happened in Tottenham, and sort of filtered down to where I live. And I remember sort of watching it on the news and seeing what was happened, and these were isolated incidences. You know, it started off as a peaceful protest, but quickly became something else, and then it spread to cities like Birmingham and Manchester and so forth. But this is completely different. You know, the majority of people are out protesting. And I think similar to yourself, Sheryl, what is happening there is it's almost like a volcano erupting of people's emotions, that actually this has got to end. And the only way some people know how to, I suppose, make it known how they feel is to take to the streets in the middle of a pandemic. People are ready to risk their lives for it. And again, you know, you've seen people like Martin Luther King, who has, you know, civil rights movement, that sort of thing. He lost his life as a result. People are prepared to, I don't want to, I suppose people are prepared to die for this, because they want to see a change, not just now, but for generations to come. So just comparing the two, between sort of what's happened in 2011 with Mark Duggan, but to now, it's different. All races are coming together. And again, like Sheryl has said about the church, that we are tackling this head on. And I think I was having a conversation with work yesterday about it, and the important thing is to keep talking about it, because the more we talk about it, the more it will become a normal conversation. And it should be a normal conversation, because it's something that's taking place. I'm not saying we normalize the behavior, but we normalize the conversation, so that people then are able to learn what is right to say, how they can help, and how we can move forward.
Really good. And I agree, it does feel, it isn't just a moment, it does feel like a movement. It feels to me certainly as though the Holy Spirit has just shone a light on this in a way that feels like a lot of people are waking up. And you know, we prayed, or I've talked for a while about another great awakening, and I do believe this is part of it. It's an awakening as to what really grieves God's heart. So yeah, I think that it's together, as you say, all races are saying enough is enough.
Yeah.
Now, Sheryl, you mentioned about you know, it can be easy for some people to say, oh, it's over in the States, you know, it's not really a problem here. But I just wanted, again, just to drill down a bit deeper and actually ask you if you feel comfortable to share with us your own experiences that you've had of racism, and just to help people understand that it isn't a faraway issue. You know, it's not something that's out there, but actually this is, you know, our friends who we dearly love have had painful experiences that unless we actually ask you what's happened to you, then we won't know. So who would like to go first to share that your own personal experience?
Well, I'm happy to share a few of mine. I have loads, but I'll do a few of them.
Go for it, Sheryl.
So, as you said earlier, I've traveled a lot, and I've been fortunate to do that with work. So let me talk about some of the things in other countries, and then I'll come back to the UK. So so I traveled to work with my supervisor and my second supervisor, both white, one German, one English, and myself. And we went to a meeting. We had a big project meeting. We went to a meeting in somewhere in Poland, Wrocław or something. And we got there at the airport. We were the first one out of the plane. I was maybe the third one, because they both went up first. And I gave my passport to the guy. And he looked at me, looked at my passport, and then he just said, stand over there. And I said, okay. And he said, yes, stand over there. And I don't remember how many people were in that plane, but he didn't speak back to me until every single other person came past, got their passport checked and everybody. And then he said, then he asked me my name. I told him my name. Then he called some other person. And then my supervisor, who is German, was getting very angry. He wanted to ask, and I like, please, 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 please do not say anything, because I don't want to be turned back. And all he did was call the other guy and ask the guy to check my name, and I told him my name, and then he went, okay. So he just wanted me to wait. In my opinion, he just wanted me to wait until every single person came through, and I was so mad. And I said to my supervisor, and they were so mad. And I said, please do not say anything, because I really can't do this right now. Anyway, we had our meeting and everything. And on the last day, we both went to the shopping center. And for anybody who knows me, I love shopping terribly. I am bad at it. Okay, so I went to the shopping center, and it was colder than we thought. So we all bought more stuff when we got there. And then I thought, wow, the prices here are really good. I'm going to buy some more stuff for coal. So my supervisor was like, he's going to sit and work on his computer. You go and shop until it's time to go. So I went upstairs to the shopping center, and at the gate of the shop, there was one security guard. So I passed him, I went in, and anybody who knows me, I took up loads of things, and I carried them in the change room, and I tried them on, because that's how I roll. And when I came out, there were like 6, 7 or something security guards. I passed one when I came. And then everybody else who were in the shop, the woman, that does all the checking and stuff, they were all hovering around my the room I was changing in. And my first thought was, I should just leave these clothes, because I'm so angry. And the second thought is, I thought, well, it's so cheap, I'm just going to buy it and show them that I actually have the money to buy it, kind of thing. That was my attitude. So I flashed out my gold credit card, paid for it, walked past them, and they were waiting, those things that you have that buzz. I think they were just waiting to hear it buzz. And I kind of walked slowly through it, because that's how I am. I walked slowly through it. It didn't buzz. I walked past, I turned around and looked, at all 6 or 7 extra security guard dispersed, because no, there was no threat of somebody. And that to me was so blatant, right? So that was blatant. But subtle ones are things like this. So you ever think about this now? You're in a restaurant, lots of people in the restaurant, and somebody has their bag on the ground or whatever, and I walk in, and immediately, in a train or any situation, and immediately as I walk past or walk in, people put their bags up, or they hold it tighter or something, and inside me I have this rage, like saying, really, really, really? For people who know me, I usually put my hands on my side and go, really? Like, really? You think I need anything out of your bag? But so the people who do it, they really don't even feel that they're doing it. It's just an unconscious thing where you think somebody is threatening. There's a Black person, they don't have money, they're going to steal what I have. And I get that lots of time, all the time. It happens all the time. I'm so used to it now, I just go really and walk past them. So that's the kind of thing, subtly, and it's not because you want to do it. It's more because in your consciousness you think it's somebody that's threatening. So we have been programmed to think Black people are bad, Black people are poor, Black people will always be doing something wicked and stealing. So you're programmed to do that. Just last week, I'll take it down and I'll give John a chance. So just last week, my friend and I were walking, having a walk up beyond where I live. And we were walking, social distance and everything. And we came to this corner, and here was a little young white girl, must be about 14 or something. She came around the corner. She saw both of us, and she stopped. And the look of fear in her eyes, Ness and John and everyone, I could almost cry. The way she looked at us was like, oh my God, what are they going to do to me? That was the look she had. She must be about 14 or 15, but that's the look she had. And I turned around to my friend and said, did you see that? And she said, yes, I saw it. And you know what she did? The girl did. She looked at her mom, like asking her mom for approval. What should I do, mom? You know. But the look of fear in her eyes, and that's what we get every day. And I'm a woman, so can you imagine what happens with a black man? So I'm a woman that normally women are not threatening, but black, strong black man, people get it all the time. Or I'm a passionate person in terms of how I speak. So if I'm in a conversation and I get really, you can see that now. So I start talking, and then you look off. People just look at you like, "Oh my God, what you still gonna do? Oh my God!" And then you just slow down, and I just slow down and sit back and go, "All right, no, Sheryl, stop now, because they're not going to be, they're not comfortable." So you can sense it, you can feel it. So those are the subtle ones. So they are blatant ones, but they're also subtle ones, and that's what a lot of British people don't understand, or people in the UK, they don't understand that they do it even with not realizing that they're doing subtle things, just subtle. So when you see a black person, you grab onto your purse, or you walk the other way or something. Why do you do that? That's what you need to think about. Why do you feel threatened? Is there something about me that makes you threatened? Because I'm a woman. Why? And that's, I think, is where it is. Inside your head, somehow it's been told to you for generations upon generations that black people are bad. So you see a black person, the first reaction is, they're going to do something to me, so I need to protect myself or protect my bag or something. So that's where it is there. And you might not know it, but that it's there. So I'll give John a chance, but I have loads more, but I'll give John a chance to say.
Thanks, Sheryl. I think for me, it's a conversation that I have with myself often, and in terms of me as a black man. Or I should let me start with this. I think I should start and say, I suppose the stories that Sheryl and myself will tell, you know, they're personal to us, and I think it's not everyone else's experiences. You know, some are very different. Some are, you know, less, worse, whatever you want to call it. And these are our experiences. So I suppose there's a level of compassion, if that's the right word, as we speak about these things. And for myself, I suppose what I don't want to do is come across in any way that is negative, because I'm not that sort of person. But these are things that have happened, and again, you know, just hearing Sheryl's story, it's quite easy to think, really, but when you put two and two together, you begin to, and it happens so much, you begin to recognize the trigger points and stuff. So I suppose our stories are from experiences, and not just isolated incidences. So for me, racism, it affects, just as Sheryl has said, it affects people in the mind. It affects me in the mind, as a black man, the way I act, the way I walk. Often, you know, when I ride my bike and I'm in a field by myself, you know, a black man on a bike in a field by himself, I make sure anyone that I come across, I smile, and I say good morning. For that reason, I don't want to be perceived in a negative light. So in terms of me, I've been stopped by the police, living in London, for whatever reason. I have been stopped in other places just because of the colour of my skin. A group of us were in Devon once, and we got stopped by the police there, took names and so forth. One that happened recently was when I was in London, and I was at a train station. I went into a shop. I was the only one in the shop, so I walked in just trying to kill a bit of time, and I had the shop attendant was at the front of the shop when I walked in, and I sort of meandered through the shop quite quickly, and a couple of minutes later the attendant I sort of looked around, and the attendant was literally right behind me. And I thought I knew exactly what that was, because again, I've had it in shops where I've had security guards sort of follow me around and keep an eye on me. One thing I've learned is just to, I say not make any sudden movements, but just to be quite clear cut in my actions. I'm looking, I'm browsing, I have nothing in my hands, I walk out, job done. That's me. So when, you know, sometimes I think quite crudely, I've made games out of it before. So I've walked up and down the aisle to see how quickly they can stay with me, that sort of thing. But you've got to take it quite lightly, because these are some of the things that you experience every day, and not only experience, but you're expected to experience these things. In my family, so before I got married to Gwen, when we got engaged, a member of the family was having a conversation with Gwen and hadn't met me. I hadn't met them. And one of his comments was, you know, they, so when he was referring to they, he was referring to Black people, what they will do is get you pregnant and leave you. And that was my immediate, hadn't met me, hadn't seen me face to face. That was his immediate, if you like, thought of me. And in the same, I say in the same conversation with the same person that I had a conversation with, sitting in the garden. And don't get me wrong, I love this guy to bits. We've now been able to develop a relationship over the years, and he's a great human being, great person. One of the sitting in his garden, and we were talking about sport, and he said, so John, what do you like to be, you know, what would you like to be called? And when he said, what would you like to be called, he was referring, would I like to be called Black, or would I like to be called coloured? And I sat there and I looked at him and I went, John would be fine. You know, for me, my skin colour, for me, is not an issue. I went to a school that was quite mixed, quite diverse, but in a very affluent area of London. And it was a safe place for me, but my experience of racism was outside. In one, I suppose, I'll tell you two more, and I'll sort of move on. But one was when I went abroad with some friends, and we, I won't name the country, but we went abroad. And as soon as we got off the plane, we got out the airport, we got on a tram, and then we went into the centre of the town. And I was the only Black guy amongst us all, so I went with three other white guys. And we got into the middle of town, and I remember literally got off the tram, stood on the pavement. A couple of guys were walking out of a park, two white guys, probably about 10 meters away from me. And we'd obviously clocked each other, so they were both looking at me. And one of them just looked at me, Nancy saluted and shouted, "White power." And the whole trip for me was, I was just constantly on edge. I already was, because I know that as a Black man, going to this country for me was a big thing. And I'd definitely be the minority, and the history of the country as well. But everywhere I went after that, I could see people sort of nudging up their friends and pointing and looking at me. A group that we were with, that we were walking with, there was a Chinese lady, and we were going through a tunnel, and she was just spat at, no reason whatsoever, just completely spat at. And it was just so uncomfortable. And for me, I couldn't explain. I wanted to explain to the people that I was with, this is what I'm experiencing. And I could have probably explained it, and they probably would have heard me for a while, but not really fully understood how I felt. So I came home and telling Gwen about these stories, and it was just like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, it's to be expected. But at the same time, it wasn't right. A time in Loughborough, I was walking to work. I'm quite a quick walker. And there was a gentleman in front of me. So I thought, let me just try and get past him so I can get to work. I was walking, got up to him and tried to get around, and then he sped up as well. So I was like, okay. So then I doubled my speed, if you like, to then walk in to the on the road to get round him. And then he got to his destination, which was sort of up a ramp, turned around and just spat at me. And then that was that. And then I just walked off. I say I walked off. I sort of stood there and I was a bit like, what are you doing? Like, what have I done? I haven't touched you. I haven't done anything. And he just went and left. And I remember going into work and I was just not in the right frame of mind at all. I felt like, was it a dream that has just happened? And I remember just sitting at my desk, almost just like, wow, this is the reality of life. For some people, probably worse, but for me, it was just a real wake-up call. So what that does to my psyche, if you like, my mentality, is I'm cautious when I walk around with my children. I want to come across as a good dad. I think I'm a good dad. I think I'm a decent dad. But then to the outside world, people might look and think, oh, he's probably just got them for the weekend. And these are just things that just run through my head. You know, if I'm in a queue and I'm standing behind, you know, a man, a lady, whoever it might be, I'm overtly friendly. If I go to a village that I've never been to before and I know that I'm a minority, I make sure that I'm as friendly and as welcoming as can be, because I feel in those moments that I'm not just representing myself, I'm probably presenting the Black race to a lot of these people. So it's a heavy weight that you carry around. And what it does, the conversations in the back of your mind, it begins to shape how you act and how you see things and how you view things. Sometimes there's that unconscious bias of, oh, you know, that they might not perceive me as positive, as a positive person. They might have had a negative experience. So again, you just try to be overtly friendly. You just try to be as welcoming as possible, to almost peel away your skin, to be like, I am a friendly person. I'm a nice person. If you get to know me, just take a couple of minutes to get to know me. So yeah, so those are some of my experiences.
Just to clarify, that situation where you stood up and then the man turned around and spat at you, that was in Loughborough, is that right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of listeners will be shocked at that, but I think it's actually really important for people to hear that this is in our town to that extent. And yeah, I know when you first told me that, I was shocked, and it actually helped reframe something as another degree of understanding of actually the level of racism that does exist in our town. Because you know, certainly for me with white skin, I would not know that, I would not see that, and so it's really important that we hear that goes on. And so let's take it then into the direction of, obviously both of you are well-loved members of Open Heaven, and but help us to understand more the experience of being Black in a white majority church. What do we need to understand more, to see more? So what would you like to tell us? Be as honest as possible. The good and the bad. What do we need to know?
So shall I say something good?
You go for it, Sheryl. Go for it, Sheryl.
So when I came, I've always been to church because I grew up going to church from when I was young. I got baptized when I was 15 or something to that effect. So being a Christian is a very important thing about me. That defines me. When I talk about myself, that's the first thing I talk about, the fact that I'm a Christian. And so when I came, and I was did a lot of work when I was back home in Jamaica with young people. I have a great passion for young people and seeing them do well. That's one of my biggest joys, to see young people really do well, because that's just about me. Anyway, so when I came, I was looking for a church, and my church told me where there was a church like my church near here, near Loughborough. So that first, I came in end of August or something. But of course, end of August to me, coming from Jamaica, even though I spent 1 year in Sweden, was freezing. So the Sunday morning, I got up early to find a place in Leicester. Well, of course, then there was no GPS on your phone kind of thing. So I had to figure it out. So I went to Leicester. It was freezing. I walked from the train station and walked until I found the church. When I got to the church, I was cold. I was tired. I was miserable. I went in and I said hello. There was somebody at the door, and they said hello, and they just looked at me like she looked ragged and out of sorts, and it was just like, oh, you just go there kind of thing. Like, oh my God, I woke up early. I came anyway. They started talking. I didn't feel comfortable. I walked back down to the train station, took a train, came back to Loughborough. And since then, I've been searching. And then when somebody invited me to come to Open Heaven, I went, and I thought, my first thought was, this is just like my youth fellowship. This is how it felt like to me, a big youth fellowship and just fantastic community. So I immediately was drawn in. And then we had cell group, and my cell group had Rich Cave, Mel Cave, lots of people in our cell group, and it was the most wonderful thing. So I felt immediately at home. And so I want to say, for me, Open Heaven, you guys are the best in terms of welcoming people, in terms of making people feel that they're part of a community. So for me, that's a good thing in terms of the community that we embrace. As I said earlier, my life is very complicated. I don't share it a lot with lots of people. So there are lots of things going on, and different times, different things goes on. I love working with the kids in Open Heaven, mainly because I feel that I connect with them a lot more than I connect with some of the adults. So don't take any offense to anybody. It's just who I am. And the reason why I feel more connected, so this is important, is because I think kids don't see anything. The kids are just open to just being there and just loving everyone. And I think that sometimes we need to be more like the kids. We need to be more like that, genuinely just ready to love everyone for whatever they are. So for me, Open Heaven is a really wonderful place. Things that we could do more. I feel really strange sometimes, especially because I might be one of two, one of three. Maybe nowadays there's more, but there were times when I was the only Black person. That felt really odd. But I'm the type of person I am, so I haven't made it bother me. But in terms of what people can do is, I think people are doing a lot already. In terms of doing more, I think it's about thinking about everybody, anybody, just me, Black, anybody. Just remember that every one of us are experiencing life in different stages and different things, and just love the compassion that Jesus had for everybody. Jesus said that we need to be good neighbors. When we talk about this, the Samaritan story, it's about helping and about sharing. So for me, all I want to see more in Open Heaven is that everybody remembers that we're modeling Christ, we're modeling Jesus. And to model Jesus, we need to love each other. We need to reach out to each other. If you see me and you ask me and I say I'm okay, and I start telling you more, that's a rare thing for me. So please look at me like you really want to hear what I want to say, because at that moment is the only moment I want to tell somebody exactly what's going on. And I don't do it a lot. So sometimes when people ask you how you're doing, they just want to hear you're fine. If I start telling you I'm not fine or there's something, just say, stop, please stop, and say, Sheryl, what else is going on? Because that's my moment of desperation to tell somebody exactly, and I don't do it a lot. So I would say when you want to know what's happening, somebody ask them, really listen, really give them the opportunity to tell you. And if there's something you can do, even just listening alone might be what they want, or you can say, is there anything I can do to help? So for me, that's what I would like to see more of. People actually listening more to people and giving them the opportunity to tell you what's happening. And we do that with everyone, not just me, not just Black people, but everyone. Let people have a chance to tell you what's happening, and you get a chance to help, like Jesus would, help and love and care for each other. I'm a servant in terms of how I like to serve people. And I think if we do more of that, we will, little by little, each one of us, if I help you and you help somebody else, it cascades, and we are all having a wonderful time where people look after each other. My neighbor, I bought this house, I don't know how many years ago, but my neighbor has been looking after my house forever. I've moved in the summer. He and his wife, David and Jan, best neighbor in the world. I bought them a cup, best neighbor in the world. And he helps me with everything. And you know what? I one day I said to his son, he really, I'm so happy. And his son said, Sheryl, you are providing him with the opportunity to not be bored. So these are little things. For him, helping me is because he doesn't want to be bored. But for me, it's a big thing because I couldn't do my patio without him. I couldn't do the garden without him. So these are little things. So it doesn't have to be big things. It can be just little things. So when you can do something little for someone, please do it. Because as a community, we have a really great community, but we can do more to make sure everybody is not left felt on the outside. So I love Open Heaven because I think we're a great community. We can do that more. And this is a good conversation to have. So if there are more of you that do it individually, so you can actually hear stories that will help you to understand. Because ignorance is the worst thing when you don't know. And nobody can blame you for not knowing because you don't grow up in the same situation as I have. So not knowing is not a bad thing. But to know, you need to ask, you need to talk, you need to understand, because that breaks the barriers down. So for me, that's where I think Open Heaven can help more, by having these kind of conversation and seeing how much you can help each other individually to make it a collective cascading of helping each other.
Yeah, that's good. I think I'd agree with Sheryl. Again, just normalizing these conversations is really important. I'm often reminded that, you know, there's that saying that church is like a hospital. You know, everyone in there is sick. We're all broken. And I think the realization of that can sometimes be lost, and it's quite easy. I do it myself, whether it's out of pride or whatever. It's easy to lose the sight that we are human, and I suppose we need Jesus, full stop. And building relationships in church can often be quite a challenge and quite difficult, because you've either got 5 minutes at the start of a gathering or 5 minutes at the end to get to know people. And it's in any relationship, when you do have differences, it takes more time, it takes more work, it takes more effort. And I've been brought up in the church, Black majority church, for most of my life when I was in London, and then we moved to East London. It was a very multicultural church. The pastor was white, his wife was Indian descent, from via Uganda. So it was just a true reflection for me of God's kingdom on earth. And coming to Open Heaven has been great, because I've like Sheryl, the welcome has been fantastic. The challenge I've probably found is the differences. Now, I'm Black, I'm 6'3". You know, I try and be inconspicuous. It's not going to happen. But I think when there is a obvious difference, I say there's not a sense of unease. I feel that at times I probably have to conform in some ways. And I say conform because I know that there's a clear difference, and I don't want to be seen as different, if that makes sense. I just want to blend in. I just want to be someone there. And I mentioned earlier just about the snapshots of conversation. And I feel that, you know, in those moments, it can be quite tense. And I feel I've got to sell myself sometimes, you know, sell myself in those 5 minutes to be like, I'm a nice guy. I love football. I've got a great family, that sort of thing. And again, like I'm quite a personable person. You sometimes read that, you know, people are either not interested from the moment they approach you, or even the moment you approach them. An example, I mean, was some not Open Heaven, but another church that I've been to is I've had that's white majority. I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, hi, where are you from?" Like that's their first question, and I reply, this was when I was living in London. I'll be like, I'm from London, and they'll be like, no, 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 where are you from? I'll be like, oh, Tottenham in North London, and they're like, no, 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 where are you from? And I'll be like, oh, okay, okay. My parents are Nigerian. I was born in the UK, blah, blah, blah. And then they proceed to tell me all about, you know, Nigeria and stuff like that. I've only ever visited once. So you know, they've completely lost me when they begin to say hello. So, but that perception immediately is based on the color of my skin. There's no, yes, I get that it's 5 minutes and maybe you want to share, but there's for me, and I'll put it quite bluntly, there's a lack of, I feel there's a lack of interest in me as a person, and more interest in the color of my skin, when I don't see it that way. What I see as a human being, I see you as a human being before me. And that's quite hard, because then again, going back to what I said before, it shapes how you think and how you perceive yourself. So when I do walk into, you know, a white majority church, I'll probably tend to just keep myself to myself. I won't mill around. I won't, you know, start conversations unless someone comes to me and I might fully engage, or, you know, it might be someone I know, I'll go over to them. I'll just generally just keep myself to myself. I remember there was an incident that happened at church, and this was Open Heaven, when someone came up to me at the end of the service or the gathering and said, "Oh, your brother was here." And I was like, "No, my brother's hundreds of miles away. He lives in London. He's, you know, I've got two brothers. One's in Gloucester, one's in London." And, you know, they weren't there. And they were like, "Oh, there was a black guy who was on the other side." Now, for the hour and a half of that gathering, he was sat on one side, I was sat on another side. There was no interaction whatsoever with this person, but there was a straightaway an assumption. He doesn't look anything like me, apart from the color of his skin. And for me, it's just that assumption. It's a straightaway assumption. You know, I love how the Bible puts it in Galatians that there is no Jew, there is no Gentile, there's no male, there's no female. We are all one together in Christ. And for me, it's like, if we really as a church live like that, what would our church look like? Our churches would be flooded with people from all walks of life, black, white, whatever it might be. But I think that there's a number of assumptions, and this doesn't go just, you know, from white majority churches. I've been to black majority churches, and people have not only thought but also said it out to me. "Oh, you don't sound like a black man." And I'm like, okay, I still don't get that question. I still don't understand that question of, like, what am I supposed to sound like? What does a black man sound like? So, you know, it's not just one side you get it from. You get it from another side. And if you find, I say, a sense of unacceptance, of not being accepted, I should say, it's probably a better word, or the right word. And you get it from both sides. So you get it from white majority, you get it from black majority. Where do you fit? Where do you find yourself? You find yourself almost in this gray area. So again, your thinking is shaped by those experiences.
And can I just add something, Ness, before you say? Because I think what John said is really powerful, and it's important to see from somebody else's view. So I'm black. I'm a woman. And church, work, wherever you go, sometimes what I get is if I'm the only one there, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, am I ticking a box that they say that says the diversity box is tick the woman's box? So I feel like I'm a very precious person that can help to tick lots of boxes. I can tick woman, black, engineering, so all the things that are not so good in this world in terms of we need more engineer, we need women in more high powers position, we need black. So I fit it. So a lot of times I'm there and I have two feelings in my head. One is, wow, it's really great that I'm here. Another one is, if I'm here to stick a box, I'm just going to sit and do nothing because that's just annoys me now. And I really sometimes want to be seen as a person that has a lot, who have studied a lot, who loves people a lot, who wants to help people a lot. But I don't want to be shaped or thought of as just the person that helps to tick a box for someone. And a lot of people, when I talk to a lot, and that's the feeling that we get when you're in the minority, you feel like you're there. I don't know if people watch movies, and in watching movies you go, token black person in the movie. If think about when you watch a movie again, look how many people, and sometimes there's one black person, and there's a friend of the lead character or somebody, the boss of the lead. You know, there's so people think that way when you're a minority, that you're there because you make a number. So please don't let people, when you're in a situation where somebody's is a minority, don't let them feel that way, because if they feel that way, then they can't be their true self. I've said this at work, and I've said students, black students, it's a very interesting study that for all over the world, UK and everywhere, where black students do very well when they come to university. So they come to university because they meet the criteria. But they leave the university not having a first class, not having a 2-1, maybe a 2-2, or just pass it. Why is that? So they come in with A star, 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 10, 12 of them, because they grew up in a family that they had to study. So they do very well. But they leave not doing very well. So a cycle is created, and the cycle is created by society where they don't do very well, so they can't get the best jobs, or their resume has a name, your name, and therefore it's put to the back. So there's lots of little things that happen in society that we are in that makes it possible for people who are white to just do very well, and for people that are black to not do very well. It's all set up like that. And I do not want to see it in the church. So if we talk about the church, we should rise above that. We shouldn't let that happen in the church. So if it's happening elsewhere in society, the church should be a place where anybody can come and not feel like they're the one that's ticking a box. So you look for the person's talent or whatever, the gifting that God has given them, and use them in those gifting. And don't be afraid to go beyond the realm of there's a black person leading, or a black, use people because that's the gifting that they have. And we talk about a lot at Open Heaven about the gifts that we have. Find the gifts that people have, whether they're black or white, and use them for that gift, and not to put them in a box where, okay, we're going to do it because it looks good to do it. Because people feel that. You feel uncomfortable knowing that you're there, not because of what you can give, but because you make it possible for people to feel comfortable that they're doing the right thing. That's the worst thing you can do to me, to let me feel like I am just there. Because if that's the case, I just lock in and I don't bother engage. I'm there, so I'm there. I've done you the job, I'm there, not to do anything else. And a lot of people potentially are lost because you don't engage with them. So please, at Open Heaven, let's make sure people feel that they can be who they are in the craziness, because I am the type of person, you notice right now, this is me, this is how I am. I talk loudly, I get animated because that's me. But you don't see that a lot at church, because I just, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But please let people be themselves, because only when your true self, your authentic self, that you bring your full potential, your talents, the gifts that God has given you. We don't want to suppress those. We want to make sure everybody is being used in the right way. So make sure we provide an environment, and especially when we have Black students come in, they're coming from a lot of different situations. I've grown up a lot. I'm old enough now to be able to, I feel strong enough. But there are a lot of young people who come in And I think OH1, we do a fantastic job, but we just remember when they come, you don't know what baggages, you don't know what problems. So make sure let's embrace them and make sure they feel that they are needed and that we are looking after them. And that means everybody, no matter who they are.
Really good. I'm aware of time, so I think we should probably get on to a way forward.
Okay.
John, I know you had some thoughts about some potential ways that actually we can begin to make this, this is a long-term commitment. And Cheryl's right, we don't want to be doing kind of knee-jerk reactions, and this is us saying we're committed for the long haul. There's no magic bullet, but there's 1,000 small changes that we can make. So over to you, John, your thoughts on possible ways forward.
I suppose the way forward ties in with what Cheryl's just mentioned. One of the questions I asked myself was, what do I want as a black man? And I don't want sympathy. I don't want sympathy. I want your love. And I'm saying, I use the, at work, I use the word, I don't want your sympathy, I want your compassion. But in the church, I don't want your sympathy, I want your love. We know the Bible describes love as patient, kind, keeps no recollection of wrong, rejoices in the truth, always trusts, hopes, perseveres, love never fails. Now, for me, that sees beyond the color of my skin. I don't want you to sympathize with me. And similarly to Sheryl, if no one wants to be tokenistic, and we don't want, to be used as that token to say, oh, push this black person into this position or whatever. Because I think you said it, Ness, character is that bar. And that should never change. So for me, it's having these conversations, and I think for people to feel that it's okay to get things wrong, because you'll never be judged on it. You'll more so be judged on your silence than anything else. Asking questions is really key. I think what's easy is that behind every statistic is a story. Now, I used to work in a charity, and our big thing was telling the stories of the young people. We could talk about X, Y, and Z percent, going on to college or, going on to further education, employment, or further training. But it was the stories that captured people, and don't be afraid to listen to people's stories. I think a way forward for me is action. And one of the, so I was talking with my friends, and we were asking ourselves, what can we do as black men, or men that are in the minority? What can we do? And one of the things we were talking about was just in the everyday, in our workplaces. If we see injustice in a way of someone being handled or treated badly, we will always speak up. Racism falls under that category. And yes, it is a delicate subject, but the moment we all take that first step, as we are now doing, everyone is taking that first step, and that first step is always going to be the hardest step. It will only get easier and easier. But if we are brave enough to call it out, if we are brave enough to ask the questions, if we are brave enough to have the conversations, then what I think we will find is we will find ourselves actually recognizing those moments of injustice and not being afraid to call it out, regardless of our race. And what we then do is we empower the next person to be able to do that. So I feel that's really important, or as a way forward, that I would see that as a starting point for a way forward.
And we've talked as well, haven't we, about just that commitment to building relationships. you know, across different backgrounds and different cultures, and because it's the building of the relationships that actually, you know, those levels then of bravery and honesty and really beginning to understand each other to the point where then it's okay to maybe always get your words right, or because there's love, because there's relationship, because you know you're journeying together. And I know I've been encouraged just hearing just a few little anecdotal stories of different people within our Open Heaven community who are just saying to others, can we go for a walk and just chat, because I want to hear more about your story. I want to know you at a deeper level. I want to understand more. And that makes my heart sing, because I think if that's happening all over, I've enjoyed that. I feel like I've done much more listening over the last few weeks and had just really helpful conversations, you know, with a number of different people. I think it's good, wouldn't it, to encourage across our community. It takes intentionality, because I think you said quite near the start, sometimes it takes just that bit more effort, doesn't it? Of like, within our natural humanity, we often, maybe because it's just less effort, it's just more easy, you kind of gravitate to people where there's similarity. But just, you know, within the church, the family of God, we have got what it takes to be able to have that intentionality of building relationship, listening to each other, asking those really good questions. And I think I sense there's a hunger for that now in a way that I hadn't really picked up before. I think, as I say, people's eyes have been open to how important that is.
Yeah. Can I just add something about timing as well? I think a lot of people have reflected a lot over this last few months, months and a half or 2 months and a half, because COVID came and people were furloughed or they had to work from home, and their lives, everybody's life slowed down. So it gave us all an opportunity to think about our lives. And I think that is why what happened to George is such a big thing, because there's so many people who could actually see it for what it was. So you're so busy you don't really see it, but you could see it because it was there and you couldn't escape from it. Yeah. I use work, people know me, I use work a lot to escape thinking about stuff because I'm so busy I can't think. When we're not busy, you think. So I think what I'd love for people to do as a takeaway is to just have a reflection about you. It might be painful for you, it might not be. Just have a reflection about you and how you see this world, because nobody's blaming anyone because of where we grew up and how we grew up, where we were born. It's just how it is. But try to start seeing now if your eyes are a little bit open. So open them a little bit more by doing more reading. There are a lot of stuff online. I saw this really lovely thing, this woman, I don't know if you've heard of her, but if you look her up on YouTube or wherever, Jane Elliott, just look her up. She's a white woman. She must be in her 80s or something, but her story and how her anti-racism is passionate. You should look her up, or look up her website, and there's some little things that you can do to reflect on your own personal things. So you don't have to share it with anybody, but just reflect on it to see how you feel, because it comes from how you feel. I said it a lot, is about our mind. Our mind is where it is, and we got to get control of our mind. We're going to get God and Jesus to take control of our mind. So have a look at that and feel people's pain and hurt, because it is a hurtful time for lots of people. I want to say one quick last thing. So on Sunday, or was it Sunday or Saturday, I got a text message from Jules. So I hope she doesn't mind me saying, sorry, Jules. But she sent me a text message and she said, "Oh, have you found a bubble?" And when I opened it, I could almost cry, because thinking about it now, I want to cry. But I was thinking about sending her a message to ask if I could join her bubble, join her family as a bubble. So when I got that text message, I replied. I can't remember what I said exactly, but I was so happy, and because she reached out to me, I didn't ask her, she did it. And these are little things. And then when I went around to the house, I got 4 hugs. It was the most wonderful feeling ever. So if, you know, lots of you are in a family and stuff, I live by myself. As I said, the only main person I've seen over the time is David and John helping with the garden. So when I got there and I got a hug from each one, I could just stay in that moment forever. So little things. So it doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just little things to look after each other, to take care of each other. So for me, it's about reflecting on who you are, how your beliefs have been set. The world was set up so that white people, white men especially, could do very well. That's not your fault. That's not anybody's fault. But what can we do to make it different so that the world, everybody can have their full potential. Everyone can have the opportunity to be who God wants them to be. Every one of us have a purpose. And to make it happen, people need to feel comfortable and confident that people are going to embrace that purpose. So give somebody a hug, send them a message, and just love on people. Because when we love on each other, that love overflows, and we love somebody else, and we love somebody else. And what would this world be if we all just loved each other and just loved each other? That's what my full thing would be. Just let's love each other. Let's just love each other.
Brilliant.
It's a good show.
John, would you close in prayer for us and just commit our way forward as a community into God's hands? That would be great.
Yeah, definitely. Father God, we thank you for this opportunity to be able to, speak candidly, but to also listen, to share stories, to share them openly and honestly and not feel judged and belittled in any way. And God, I am grateful for our community where we can have these conversations openly. And I just pray, God, going forwards that the momentum will continue, that we will be able to see your kingdom here on earth, Lord Jesus. We will see people come to know you. Through this, we will see reform in governments. We will see changes being made at workplaces, in communities, God. People turning around and embracing all races, cultures. Father God, the isolated, the marginalized will no longer feel the hurt and pain. And equally, other people will not feel that they are in control of others. But God, we just pray for your love to surround, for your love to impact communities and be imparted into local communities. And we pray for the town of Loughborough, Lord Jesus, that I just want Loughborough to be a beacon within the Midlands, to see change happening, Lord Jesus, across the Midlands, across the UK. That we as a church, the Church of Loughborough, will rise up and tackle this issue, tackle racism head on, and be a leader in it, not tackling it in our own knowledge, in our own strength, but in the love of Christ and with the power of the Holy Spirit. So Father God, we thank you for the time that we've had, and we pray that you will just continue to change our hearts, change us from the inside out, Lord. In your precious name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, guys. Your honesty and your vulnerability is just so appreciated, and it's actually all part of the healing process that I believe that God is doing, and it sets us up, it moves us on to the next step of really being a community that celebrates and demonstrates unity. Thank you so much. I know that you'll probably get a whole load of people saying thank you over the next few hours and the next few days, but thank you so much. We love you guys, and we really appreciate this gift that you both are. So,
Thanks, Ness.
And thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for this opportunity, and
Yeah.
forward to more and to just chatting with people and just, yeah. So thank you, Ness, and you're doing a fantastic job. You and the leadership team. Just want to say thank you, guys.
Yeah. I echo Cheryl's words.